StrayAllDay.com.
Now tuned into the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there, even when the success you've expected to achieve has yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative, which is the go-getter energy that moves any one of us, including yourself, to go and make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. Then we put all this together into one bundle, one package, one mindset, one method, one philosophy, one book, one show, one daily masterclass that is called Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. And today's topic is, what does it actually mean to be pro-black? Pro-black. Now this is a phrase that pro-black phrase is not new. I mean, people have been throwing this phrase around for a very long time, but what exactly is it meaning to be pro-black? Well, there's a way that a lot of people talk about it these days. I'm gonna give you, of course, being that this is my show, I'm gonna give you my take on what it actually means to be pro-black, that we're talking about something that's actually going to help and advance black people. Now, before I even get into that, let me tell you that I have a text number where you can send me a text and you can share your thoughts on something that you heard today or something you heard on any other episode of this show. You will also be then receiving my daily motivation text messages that I send out every morning. My number is 305-384-6894. Again, 305-384-6894. Now, again, the topic is what it means to be pro-black on the heels of what I talked about in yesterday's episode. I talked about black self-accountability. If you've heard anything where I've talked about any of these issues when it comes to systemic racism, race, and all of this stuff here on this show, then you probably have a pretty good idea of maybe where my angle is going to be when it comes to this. But let me give you a definition of pro-blackness that I'm reading on an Urban Dictionary. Now, Urban Dictionary is a site that is, let's just see how do I want to say this. It's kind of tongue-in-cheek, kind of cheeky, some of the things that they say. I'm going to read this definition, and I think they mean this in a more serious way. So let me read this definition, and this is not reflective of anything Work on Your Game necessarily stands for. Let's read what they say, then we're going to get into my points. From Urban Dictionary, quote, pro-black is a lifestyle that encourages the economic growth and development of the black people as a whole, with a purpose of increasing the wealth and population of black people around the world, whether it be spending money with black-owned businesses in your communities or online. Promoting love for black people and encouraging black youth is its sole purpose, to keep uplifting black people in America to be proud at the same time. Close quote. Now, the first thing I'll tell you about this definition, and I will probably it is very unlikely I'm going to read too much more from Urban Dictionary ever again on this show, because this definition, even in itself, has a bunch of misspellings and a bunch of grammatical errors just in this short little paragraph that I just gave you. But anyway, I already told you, I gave you a disclaimer of what Urban Dictionary is. This is not an official source of substantial information. Anyway, what it means to be pro-black, and I'm just going to get into these when I get into my points here today, but what a lot of people talk about when they talk pro-blackness, it means pitting yourself as a black person kind of against, quote unquote, the system, against the government, against certain types of white people who may not have the same ideas or opinions as you or have come to the same conclusions as you. There are many people who, if they heard what I said in yesterday's masterclass, or many of the others where I've talked about victimhood, where I've talked about white people ain't our business, where I talked about the George Floyd episode, where I talked about systemic racism, where I talked about the race hustlers, will listen to what I said and say, well, this guy, Dre, he's not pro-black, because he's saying all these things that where I call myself holding black people accountable, they may say, well, you're just blaming black people, or you're letting these white people off the hook, or you're letting the government off the hook, and you're not recognizing the history. You're not recognizing the system. You're not recognizing these outcomes. You're not recognizing these things, and they have the right to their opinion. Their opinion is wrong, but they got the right to it. Let's get into what I mean when I say what it means to be pro-black. It's really a question that I'm asking today. So I'm going to give some of mine, and I'm going to give some of what I've heard and seen out there. And again, any of you who's listening to this, you are welcome to engage with me by texting me at 305-384-6894 on anything that you've heard here today or otherwise. Point number one, it has baffled me as to why black people are the only group, again, racial group, cultural group, religious group, who will argue and become territorial about who qualifies about being the thing. You don't hear, at least I don't see it publicly. And again, if you're part of one of these groups, you can help me out. I don't hear Christians arguing about, well, I'm really Christian, but you're not. Or I'm pro-Christian, you're not Christian, even though they're both sitting there in the church, right, at the church group. I don't see Latin people saying, I'm a real Latin and I'm a real Latino or Latina, and you're not. I don't see Jewish people arguing about who's more Jewish than the other person, but black people do this. Or who's more black, or I'm more black than you because I'm doing this, or I'm saying this, or I represent this, or I'm going against this. We get territorial about blackness. Even Joe Biden, President Joe Biden now, but when he was running for the presidential office, this old 80-year-old wrinkled white man, he went on a popular show in our culture called The Breakfast Club, and he did it through Zoom because this was during the pandemic. He went on there and he declared that if you have to decide between him and Donald Trump, you ain't black. Now, it was a tongue-in-cheek statement. The way that he said it, I read that it was tongue-in-cheek, the way that Joe Biden made the statement. But at the same time, Joe Biden wasn't going to throw out a tongue-in-cheek thing if there wasn't some truth within that jest. And Joe Biden wasn't joking when he said that. And here's the crazy part. There are a bunch of black people who 100% agree with what Joe Biden said, whether they think it was a joke or not. There's some black people who I know, people who I text with often, people who I know personally, who said, whoever I vote for in the election, I'm not going to vote for Donald Trump because Donald Trump has been planted in their minds that Donald Trump is racist. Even though when I would engage with these people and say, well, okay, well, give me some examples. Tell me what he did that makes him a racist person. Not even give me examples, but tell me what is he doing? What does he represent that makes him racist? And that's the reason why you wouldn't vote for him. And often they can't really offer much by way of substance. And maybe you could. Maybe you could offer some examples. And again, as I said yesterday, and I'll say many times in the future, there are examples for everything. So any point of view that anyone could possibly have, I guarantee you could find examples if you look hard enough. Examples do not prove an argument. All right, examples just prove that there are examples. So you can find an example for 10 examples for one thing that you believe. I guarantee someone could find 10 counter examples for the exact opposite of what you believe. So keep that in mind anytime you're in any type of debate or discussion or argument with a person, that an example does not prove a point. All right, it just proves that you have an example. Anyway, Joe Biden said, if you got to decide between me and Trump, you ain't black. Does anybody ever say that? Can you take out the word black and hear anyone making any kind of statement like that with any other group? Hey, if you got to do this or this, you ain't Jewish. You do this or this, you're not Latin. You do this or this, you're not white. Very rarely do I hear any. I don't know if I've ever heard anyone use that phrase other than black. Now, Joe Biden chose those words himself, so I'm not going to put this on black people that Joe Biden said this, and Joe Biden is clearly white. Is the fact, though, that Joe Biden felt, as a matter of fact, Joe Biden knew he could get away with saying it. That proves my point. The fact that Joe Biden could say that and give a little smirk after, and it be tongue-in-cheek, and people laugh about it, and a whole bunch of black people went and voted for Joe Biden anyway after he said that, is exactly my point. There are other groups who, if you came to them and said something like that, they would say, okay, just because of the fact that you're telling me as someone who's not part of my group what makes me qualify or doesn't make me qualify, you've cost yourself my vote. Or if you cost yourself any credibility you have with us, you cost yourself your ability to get in front of us again and actually be heard because of what you just said. And again, he chose the words, but we went and voted for him anyway. And listen, he did get away with it because, as I said, a whole bunch of black people said they're not going to vote for Trump no matter what because of their blackness and nothing else. It was no other reason. Just because of being black, there's no way I could vote for Donald Trump. And this is something that was just planted in their mind. I told y'all to stop watching the news in episode 1474. Go listen to 1474 if you haven't already. But this first point here is that when it comes to blackness, we're the only group that's territorial about it. But then even when a white person tells us what qualifies us as black, we're still listening to them. It's not even us saying it to ourselves. We let other people tell us what makes us black. Point number 2. The topic once again is, what does it mean to be pro-black? I have never liked or subscribed to any ideology that prescribes to you what you can and can't do just because of your affiliation to the group. Just because you're black, okay, you can do this, but you can't do that. Now, I will make jokes about it. I will make tongue-in-cheek statements. I've made many tongue-in-cheek statements in the past, whether it be publicly or privately, about being black. I remember I said something like, somebody was asking me, I don't even remember what the person was saying, but I said, well, somebody asked me if I could swim. I said, no, I'm black. Of course I can't swim. And everybody laughed because it was funny. I meant it in a tongue-in-cheek way. I actually can swim. I live in buildings with pools, and I do actually have the ability to swim. But it was a joke. I said something like, I remember someone was asking me about me being vegan, which I am. I'm vegan with an asterisk. I mean, I eat meat when I feel like it, but for the most part, I eat vegan. My meals delivered are vegan. But I said to them, they were asking me what kind of food do I eat if I don't eat vegan, and I said, well, I eat a bacon cheeseburger, a cheesesteak because I'm from Philly. I eat fried chicken because I'm black. And everybody laughed. It's funny. I meant it in a tongue-in-cheek type of way. But the reason that I'm bringing that up is that telling people what they can and can't do because you're black. For example, saying you can't say anything positive about, let's just say, Donald Trump, or about some conservative, or about some Republican, or about any white person who's ever been accused of doing anything that's quote unquote racist. You can't say anything positive about them because you're black. And if you do, then you are dishonoring your blackness, or maybe losing your stripe, or losing your affiliation to being black because you said something that you quote unquote weren't supposed to say. Rules and standard procedures, I understand. Now, if you're part of a group and there are some rules and some standard procedures, I understand having those. It's kind of like if you work at a job and they say, make sure your uniform is clean, or if you're working in some type of food service industry and they say, wash your hands when you go to the bathroom, I 100% get that. But I do not get someone saying, well, you're black, so that you have to have this opinion. And this is something that even Kanye West, we haven't heard from him in a while, but maybe we will by the time you hear this episode, he talked about, like, just because you're black doesn't mean you have to be a Democrat, or just because you're black doesn't mean you have to do this, or you have to think this way. And again, we are the only group that pigeonholes ourselves into certain ways of thinking and certain ways of acting just because we're black. All right, you're black, you have to do this, this, and this. And if you're not, then it's almost like you're questioning yourself. Even if nobody says anything, even if you're the only one who knows about it, you're questioning yourself because you're doing something that is quote unquote not black. That's much closer to ignorance than it is intelligence. Intelligence is you look at a situation, you think about it, and based on your knowledge, the knowledge that you have at that moment, you make the best decision for you. Ignorance is you're just doing something because you have no idea. You're just going off of what somebody else told you. But being that this is the case for many people, especially in the black community, those who feel they are being more black than others, what are you licensed to do that others who do not qualify as being black cannot do? What can you do when you feel like you're being all the way black that someone who's not all the way black can't do? Is there any of you who's listening to this who feels like you are all the way black, you're 100% black, that you can do that others who ain't black can't do? Anything? What perks and bonuses come with being a quote unquote real or full-fledged black person that the less real do not have, other than your sense of superiority, or maybe just something that you think in your mind? But is there anything tangible that you can kind of lay out that people can see and understand? Okay, when you're 100% black, you can do this, but when you're only 50% black, you can't. You got to do this other thing. I don't know if there's anything, because I mean nowadays, look, if you're a mixed child, or not even a child, but a mixed person, you're a, what's the word? You are a person who comes from an interracial marriage or interracial couple. You have interracial parents. You're black, right? And then you're leveraging that and saying, okay, see, these white people had this white privilege, and you're going out with Colin Kaepernick is mixed. And a lot of people that we see out here, many people that we see out here going the hardest actually against whites or against the system or trying to be quote unquote pro-black, a lot of them are mixed people. And that's a different conversation for a different day. I've seen a lot of people who have strong opinions on that and why that is with those people. And again, knowing that we don't have the ability to read people's minds, I'm not going to try to psychoanalyze them, but it's just something I'm going to point out. And we'll just leave it there. And let's move on to the third point. Today's topic, once again, is what exactly does it mean to be pro-black? Number 3, when these pro-black people, quote unquote pro-black people, get together to discuss quote unquote pro-black topics. And sometimes, let me be clear, sometimes the participants are even white people. There are white people who are pro-black. You don't have to be, it's not limited to being black to be pro-black. Sometimes even white people in these conversations. Here's the funny thing about it. The discussion always ends up being about white people. I mean, think about it. Think about the people who do the most posturing and gesturing and noise making to make sure that you know how black they are, and then think about where their conversations always end up. It always ends up talking about white people, even though they're supposed to be pro-black. All they can talk about is white people. Now, you heard yesterday's episode, right? What was I talking about all through yesterday's episode? What was yesterday's episode really about? I mean, look at the title. You can see it right there, even if you don't listen to the episode. It's about how black people need to look at themselves in the mirror. And what do we need to do ourselves? Not what everybody else needs to do. But these pro-black people, they're supposed to be the blackest of the black. Every time they talk, they eventually turn the conversation to what white people need to do and what white people have, and comparing black people to white people. Why do they always turn the conversation to something other than black people, even though they're supposed to be pro-black? I'll tell you why. Because they want to indoctrinate you with a mentality of victimhood that keeps a ceiling over your head, that you feel like a victim of the government, the system, white people, racism, etc. And let me tell you why they want to keep a ceiling over your head. There's a benefit for them. There are actually two benefits. Number one, because you are a victim, you can never become a true leader, and thus you will never surpass them. You will always need them. You will always be a subordinate underling to them. So it keeps them in a position of power. That's the one reason. And number two, being that you are a victim, you will always need the guidance of the very people who can and will happily explain to you why you're a victim and keep you mentally in bondage as long as you keep coming back. So it's just two different ways of them maintaining their power. And when they have power over you, you go buy their books, you go hire them as a consultant, you go sign up for their events, you follow them on social media, you listen to everything that they say, you go mimic their ideas, even their bad, poorly thought out and poorly fleshed out ideas. You go repeat these things. This is the twofold benefit that these pro-black race hustlers get by keeping you indoctrinated with their bullshit ideas. This is what the quote-unquote pro-black people are doing. So if that's what the pro-black people are doing, here's my question to you. What are our enemies doing? These are people who are pro-black. What is someone who hates black people? What do they got up their sleeve? This is what the pro-black people are doing. I mean, I just want somebody can help me out. Again, somebody fill me in. I don't know everything. So I know a good amount, but I don't know everything. So somebody fill me in as what's the enemy doing if this is what our supporters are doing. So today's topic, I told you I was going to give you kind of an idea what I think pro-black is, but what I'm really talking about is what I think other people are saying when they say pro-black. This is not my prescription for pro-blackness. My prescription for pro-blackness is actually everything that I talk about on this show. If you just made it all about black people instead of just a person in general, every single episode of this show could fit the description. Yesterday was a pretty good deep dive into what I think black people need. This is self-accountability. But the self-accountability would erase and vaporize all the race hustlers. They wouldn't know, they could still exist as human beings, they still be alive, but they have to get new jobs. I don't know if their resumes are polished up. What do you think? Let's recap today's class, which is, what does it mean to be pro-black? I'm not reading that Urban Dictionary definition again because it was too many. We're not reading from Urban Dictionary. Anyway, let's get into our points. Number one, it has baffled me as to why black people are the only group that I know of, that I see, and if I'm wrong, somebody check me, who argues and is territorial about who qualifies as being a thing. We even got white people telling us what qualifies you to be black, and then we go accept it, as we did with Joe Biden in the 2020 election. Number two, I'm never like any ideology that prescribes what you can and can't do just because of your affiliation to the group. Now, I understand rules, like if you work at a food service business, wash your hands when you go to the bathroom, but if you're told you have to have a certain opinion just because of the group that you're a part of, that's much closer to being ignorant than it is to being intelligent. But being that this is the case for many people who want to be, I guess they see themselves as being more black than other people, a lot of them not even fully, a lot of them half black individuals, what are you licensed to do being more black that other people are not licensed to do, if anything? Now, I've been black my whole life. I don't know the answer to that question, so if someone can help me out, tell me what it is. Point number three, when these pro-black folks get together to discuss what are allegedly pro-black topics, and sometimes it's white people in those groups, they always end up talking about white people. And they want to indoctrinate you with victimhood because they get two things from it. Number one, you can never become a leader and never become their competition, so they keep the podium and the pulpit. And number two, because you're a victim, you'll always need their guidance and information and their quotes. So it keeps them in a position of power over you so that they can keep hustling you, because that's what they do. They're race hustlers. They are hustlers, and hustlers are not stupid people. They're smart. They know exactly what they're doing. I'm just explaining the game to you. So if this is what the pro-black people are doing, imagine what the enemy has in mind. All that said, send me a text. Tell me the best thing you got from today's masterclass. If it was terrible, you can let me know that too. My number is 305-384-6894. Again, 305-384-6894. Work on your game. Dre all day.